Morning friends, today we will be discussing about anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty. Anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty has gone a long way since the starting and it has now developed a lot. Still, the numbers of anatomical total shoulder replacement is declining all over the world due to re-emergence of reverse shoulder arthroplasty. Now we'll be just focusing today on anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty. Now the important factors regarding anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty is an intact rotator cuff. The rotator cuff should be robust and strong for a total shoulder replacement to be successful. The glenoid should not be severely deficient. The patient should have an intact neurology, and obviously there should be no active infection. These are the four parameters which must be present in any particular patient. Now we start the talk with the second generation design. So these are the older designs that we were doing, and these designs were characterized by longer stems, and they have a different size of the head, which were they are dependent on their size. So that you have different heights of the humeral head, and then you have a simple oval glenoids in these designs. So Bigliani Plateau is one example of this second generation device. So it has a 3-pegged glenoid. Also there was a keyed glenoid which was available, and there was a long stem which was very smooth distally, and it was relatively porous on the proximal aspect, and this was a one stem. There was less modularity, and then you have a different size head which can have different heights of the humeral head. Now as far as the exposure is concerned, the humeral head is usually exposed after the dislocation, and the stem has to be inserted in a proper retroversion. These are the two very important steps. Usually the stem is exposed in about 25 to 30 degrees of retroversion. The glenoid exposure is of paramount importance. We normally use a 3-peg glenoid in these older designs. So usually they were oval glenoids, and it was symmetrical from up and down. And if you want to implant a glenoid in a proper way, you need to have a very good exposure of the glenoid, and the glenoid exposure is improved by using a thorough capsulotomy, anterior and posterior. Now the capsulotomy has to be done 360 degree in patients who have a concentric glenoid loss, but those patients who have eccentric glenoid loss and more of a posterior glenoid wear, in those particular subset of patients, you should not do a posterior capsulotomy because that can cause a posterior subluxation of humeral head. So this is an important thing that you need to take care. You can always also use a keeled glenoid in this particular set of patients, but in long run the pegged glenoid have worked out better in long-term results as compared to a pegged glenoid component. Now this is an example of a cemented Bigliani Plateau total shoulder arthroplasty. It was a cemented stem, and it has an option of a keel or a 3-peg glenoid. And here you can see that there is a marker in the center of the glenoid which will give you an idea about the position of the glenoid. Now cemented stem had advantages. The main advantages are it has good fixation. You can add antibiotics to it. You can adjust your positioning. You can down or up the position. If your proximal anatomy is distorted, it can still be used. And the positioning is a variable thing, so you can adjust your positioning accordingly. So there are some disadvantages. The extraction is definitely difficult, and there are isolated case reports of radial nerve injuries secondary to cement extrusion through the nutrient artery foramen. It is not a very common occurrence, but theoretically it can occur. Now in this particular technique, we don't usually recommend a cement pressurization, and we usually recommend a bone plug distally to limit the distal migration of the cement. Now as far as the glenoid is concerned, a convex glenoid is superior to a flat glenoid. We want to recreate a neutral version. A peg design is biomechanically superior to a keel design. Polyethylene backed component is mechanically superior to a metal back components. The metal back components have not done as well in the glenoid. The reason is probably the glenoid is not large enough to accommodate both metal and polyethylene. Now there are some newer glenoids which have an uncemented sort of a attachment to the poly. They are doing good, and we will be covering that. Now your combined retroversion should be 25 to 40 degrees. You should try to put your glenoid in a neutral version. The glenoid should not be put in more than 10 degrees of retroversion, maximum 10 degrees of retroversion, because if you put your glenoid in more retroversion, it will cause a Big Bang phenomenon. So the glenoid can toggle if you put in more retroversion. So the maximum retroversion the glenoid can tackle is around 10 degrees. Now, as far as the humeral component is concerned, you should avoid overstuffing, and your top of humeral head should be at least 5 to 10 millimeters superior to the top of greater tuberosity. That will ensure a good movement arc of the shoulder. So there is a good offset. So humeral head should be higher than the greater tuberosity. Now this is one of our patients operated 4 years back with a total shoulder arthroplasty with the second generation prosthesis, and she is doing absolutely fine. She is doing a very good range of motion. Now this is her 4-year follow-up. So this is the left shoulder we have done, and she has achieved almost equal function. So in those patients who are osteoarthritis and who are young patients, anatomical shoulder arthroplasty can achieve wonders. Now this is another one of our patients. She has been allowed a total shoulder arthroplasty, and in this particular subgroup of patient, we have seen that total shoulder arthroplasty has achieved good function as far as on the right side, but it has got a relatively less function on the left side. So she was a patient with a rheumatoid shoulder, and now at 9 years of follow-up, we know that rheumatoid shoulders do not do as well with the reverse shoulder with the anatomical total shoulder replacement as compared to a reverse shoulder replacement. Now, as far as the cemented anatomical stem is concerned, you should have an adequate cement lining both on the glenoid side as well as the humeral head side. Now there are some important points to note. The pain relief is more predictable in total shoulder arthroplasty as compared to a hemiarthroplasty. The functional relief is less predictable in total shoulder arthroplasty as compared to a reverse shoulder arthroplasty. Reverse shoulder arthroplasty is a more predictable and more functional. You can achieve more function in a reverse shoulder arthroplasty. The need of physiotherapy and rehabilitation in total shoulder arthroplasty is more than a reverse shoulder arthroplasty. Usually you achieve a good survival at 10 years, close to around 90 to 93%, but you have a worse result with a post-capsulotomy arthropathy and post-traumatic arthritis. So you should use total shoulder arthroplasty with caution in this subgroup of patients. Now there are third generation, which is a modular comprehensive total shoulder replacements which are available. The advantages are it has a modular glenoid, it has an uncemented stem. Now you have an option of a micro, mini, standard and a long stem. The micro stem is 53 millimeters, the mini stem is 83 millimeters, the standard stem is 122 millimeters, and the long stem is 183 millimeters. You have a 1 millimeter increment in humeral stem from 4 millimeters to 20 millimeters, and it is a platform stem, so you can convert it to reverse shoulder replacement. That is possible. Now I am just presenting a small case. He is a young 50-year-old male patient presenting with pain and stiffness of shoulder, inability to sleep. The range of motion is restricted and painful, and the arm is fixed in internal rotation and no external rotation is possible. So this is the X-ray of this particular patient, and we can see that there is a large inferior osteophytes which are present. But the important thing here to look after is there is a good space on the acromiohumeral aspect. So we expect that the rotator cuff function will be good in this particular patient. Now the treatment option we consider in this particular patients were medications and physiotherapy, a second generation total shoulder arthroplasty, a third generation or a modular total shoulder arthroplasty, reverse shoulder arthroplasty, and a hemiarthroplasty. Since the patient was young and we suspected the rotator cuff would be normal in this particular patient because of a good rotator cuff area, and you have a good acromiohumeral space, we went ahead with a total shoulder arthroplasty. You can go ahead with do an MRI to assess the exact status of the rotator cuff, and usually we recommend then up to a grade 2 of a rotator cuff degeneration, you can recommend a anatomical total shoulder replacement. and this was a post-op X-ray. The important thing here you can see is you have an offset glenoid. So this is a versatile humeral head component, and this is a modular component, so you can adjust the offset of this component. So this is a versatile component, the offset part is adjusted, and here it's a comprehensive glenoid, which is a 3-peg glenoid. So it is a central peg and 3 peripheral peg, actually a 4-peg glenoid, and it has an option you can attach a Regenex stem also in this particular glenoid. Now if we talk about the glenoid, there are some technical implications. So excessive medialization will lead to a decrease in cross section of the glenoid, so avoid excessive medialization. So if you have around 15 to 20 degrees of retroversion, you can do a eccentric reaming and correct the retroversion. If it is more retroversion, so if you have a retroversion more than 15 to 20 degrees, you have two options. You can use either a posterior bone graft or you can use a posterior offset glenoid. And if it is more than that, you need to use a reverse shoulder replacement. Avoid using a anatomical total shoulder replacement in these particular patients. Metal bagged and inlay designs have been launched, but they are not very successful as of the date. This was a metal bagged glenoid which has proved unsuccessful because of an accelerated polywear. Now this is a Zimmer trabecular metal glenoid. This is a good glenoid. This is a hybrid glenoid because this is a porous coated material which fits into the glenoid vault, and the peripheral part of the poly is cemented. So it has got a good fixation and it works since. The most common processes that we use is this. This is a modular glenoid base plate. It's a wide central peg with a 3 peripheral peg. It is a pear-shaped design, so it is wider in bottom as compared to top, and it is more anatomical kind of a processes. And you have two options. You can add a central poly peg into this design, or you can use a Regenex stem into this particular design. Now this comprehensive design comes up with its own instrumentation. You can use a central larger peg as I told you, and then there are 3 peripheral pegs. So there are specific instrumentations which will help you with this particular procedure. And this is the Regenex glenoid that I was talking about. So this is a central metal peg which fits up very nicely into the vault. It has a very nice purchase, and this particular design has a very less chances of glenoid loosening. The only problem here is if you have a loosening, if you want to revise your glenoid, it is very difficult to remove because it fixes up very snugly into the glenoid vault. So there is a nice paper in which the anatomical shoulder arthroplasty has been recommended as a good option even if in a case of glenoid bone loss by Daniel Song, and in this particular paper it has been described about using a bone graft as well as a posterior offset glenoid. Now glenoid loosening is a very common complication, and if we talk about the etiology, the cement fixation usually produces a thermal mediated damage adjacent to the implant and bone necrosis while the PMMA polymerization is setting, and therefore it may lead to a eventually enhanced loosening of the glenoid component. Now glenoid component, you can see radiolucent line in around 90% of glenoids. It is most common between 5 to 10 years. More commonly these lines are incomplete and they are less than 1.5 millimeters in diameter or thickness. The actual clinically apparent glenoid loosening is around 24 to 32% of all complications of total shoulder arthroplasty. The ideal glenoid retroversion should be less than 10 degrees. But they are not all loose. So if you want to see about actual glenoid loosening, the signs are: you have a complete radiolucent line which is more than 1.5 millimeters thick. You have a progressive and irregular lucency. You have a tilt, shift or migration of component or a dislocation of the component, which are signs of an actual glenoid loosening. Now glenoid defect management, as I told you, you can do a eccentric reaming up to 15 to 20 degrees of retroversion. You should aim up to 10 degrees of retroversion. A retroversion beyond 10 degrees is not acceptable, and then you can use a posterior augment as a bone graft or a posterior glenoid offset, which will be very successful. If you have a severe deformity or severe bone loss, we recommend that you use a reverse shoulder arthroplasty. Now this is a picture in which we have shown a posterior bone grafting, it is usually recommended what the graft you have, the graft you harvest from the head is implanted into the glenoid, and you can fix it up with either like K wires or screws, and then you can prepare your glenoid accordingly. Now this is a very vast series. This is a Danish shoulder arthroplasty registry, a huge series of 2,867 shoulders, in which it was categorically mentioned that anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty is better than the reverse shoulder arthroplasty in osteoarthritis, and it should be preferred in patients with an intact rotator cuff and no posterior subluxation. So it is proved that the rate of total shoulder arthroplasty has increased over time between 2006 to 2015 in patients with exclusive osteoarthritis and young patients, and it is achieving better results as compared to reverse shoulder arthroplasty. So I will recommend anatomical shoulder replacement for patients suffering from osteoarthritis with intact cuff and minimal glenoid wear to do a total shoulder arthroplasty. Now this is a nice series by Pascal Berlo, and in which a total shoulder arthroplasty in patients which are younger than 10 years have a good outcome. So this is a series of 395 patients, around 20 to 25% patients who have a glenoid failure and they'll need a revision. Around 5% of the patient had rotator cuff pathologies, and for which they need to be revised. At mean follow-up of 15 years, there were about 16-year revision-free survivorship. Around 30% of the patient had a failure of glenoid implant at the last follow-up, and clinical and subjective results were significantly better in patients without a glenoid failure. Radiolucent line score was significantly higher in patients with malpositioning. So malpositioning is a poor prognostic factor. Now we'll just discuss about functional results of hemi and total shoulder arthroplasty according to the patient diagnosis and age of the surgery. This is a German paper, and they say around 70% of the patients with total shoulder replacements are satisfied with their post-operative results. The pain relief was better in the older group, and the constant scores were better in a primary osteoarthritis as compared to a post-traumatic osteoarthritis. So 63% of patients with primary osteoarthritis were happy as compared to only 36% of the patients who had a post-traumatic osteoarthritis, and they were happy. Now there are some limitations to anatomical total shoulder arthroplasty we must understand. It is a less predictable procedure. There are some patients who do excellent, there are some patients who may not do that good. The rehabilitation is more demanding than reverse shoulder arthroplasty. It should be used in caution in patients with a non-functional cuff. It should be used in caution with patients with a severe glenoid bone loss. Glenoid loosening is a real problem, and if you want to use a glenoid, use a PEG glenoid more than a keyed glenoid. Thanks a lot.